Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ratings Show here on the Blue Abroad YouTube channel. It is a cold Monday, the 15th of July, 2024. We're sitting here after a round 18 loss to the Western Bulldogs. I've got Pommy in a turtleneck.
Yeah, I'm in my World War II naval officers era. Here we are. So there we are. Yeah. It's a wee bit cold, so you get the turtlenecks out.
This is the second most proud I've been when it comes to your fashion. The first was when you debuted the draft jacket, the blazer, and this is a close second, borderline first. I'm a big fan.
Thanks, I think.
It's a genuine compliment. When I saw it, I was like, yeah, we are stepping up here.
Hey, mate, I tell you, it's no one's complimented, but my fashion game in 2024, I would just quietly say has been sensational. But I'm not going to fish for compliments, but it has been. Solid 9. I'm just pointing out there.
Now that I think about it, you've had some pretty cool jumpers, sweaters over the last month in particular.
Solid 9. I'm telling you. Solid. If I was rating it, no algorithm, but it's a 9. Telling you.
Well,
it's a 9. You can tell. You can tell I'm trying to be healthy because my fashion reflects my health choices.
It's good, mate. Look, we got a lot to unpack tonight. Coming off 2 losses in a row. This one, I don't know about you, this one really snapped me into gear in terms of watching every millisecond in the replays.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I do every week, Terry. So
yeah, I know.
Well, welcome to Pom's world. But I mean, yeah, nothing's linear. Do you know what I mean? So when you lose, everyone looks for a reason. When you win, everyone's busy touching it. I did have a comment on my Twitter, I believe, from an opposition fan who just randomly in my review asked my masturbation practices. Social media is a random place. Fucking random. Yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it? But I mean, this is why we're here, isn't it? You know, as a father, you take on that role of being the bosom to cry on.
Yes, indeed. So, look, if you are new to the ratings, welcome. This is what we're going to do. This is what it's all about. We have an algorithm that Pommy created. We go through every single player. We rate them based on their role against every other player in the competition in the same role. And we get a score that gets spat out from 0 to 10. Those of you who are here every week, you kind of know how the system works. But if you're new, make yourself known. Let us know if this is your first rating show. We are brought to you by Horizon Finance Group. And I'm really excited because this has just become a staple of every week now. Like, I understand the fan cams is important to vent out everything, but the ratings now just it's the deep dive into everything that happened. So, Pommy, what can we expect tonight?
Yeah, I mean, you can expect what you probably would be expecting. I mean, it's not exciting, to be honest, in the terms of, like, we're not going to see a lot of blues, but we are going to see a lot of explanation for where it's gone wrong. So that's really exciting. That when you can see why you shit.
Yeah.
So I always find some solace in that. So it's good. We're going to have a bit of a laugh. We'll get some jokes going and hopefully we'll get some closure come 6:45 tonight.
All right. Let's stop messing around and let's get straight into it. We're going to start as the team was named. So we'll start with Jacob Weitering. He was only one of 2 players that Carlton players that earned a coach's vote. What did you think of Weiters in his game?
As close to sensational as you could be under that kind of much duress. I think out of all the back 6 back 8, if we count players that rotated, I think he looked the most reliable. I don't think he didn't look getting beaten. He didn't. It was more of a return to the Weitering that we know and love as well, the intercept marks leader in our team. Big issue against a team like the Dogs who don't mark inside is when your leading spoiler is 5. We've got a bit of a problem. It means that the ball is probably been on the ground because of the opposition, not because of you, which means it goes to their advantage. But all in all, Weitering was fantastic, and you can't really worry about it. He was brilliant all the way through.
Yeah, I thought. Yeah, obviously he led the team in a number of stats, as you can see here. Again, if you're new to the show, anytime you see an asterisk, it means that the player led the team in that stat. The intercept marks was the big one. I thought only a couple of moments didn't go his way where his reaction time was a little slow, but ultimately I think he, along with maybe Cowan and Saad, they were the better defenders on the day. So he's coming along nicely. Did you notice Vossi's comments in the presser about him?
Yeah, I mean, you've got 2 trains of thought, haven't you, when you get a corky? I mean, you've got the loud majority say it's a fitness issue. And then anybody who's ever had a corky, doesn't matter if you're 85, overweight and smoke 40 a day, or you're 12 in the pinnacle of your life, they happen the same way. I do think when the Weitering suffers from the Harry complex, which is because you're so dominant in the air, you can kind of get punched in the ribs and no one cares.
Yeah.
I always think it's a result. Free kicks are a results-based, literally a results-based analysis. If you still take the mark, you're not going to get paid the free kick. So it's an interesting one. He probably needs a bit more protecting, but I mean, the guy's sensational, let's be honest.
He is. Gets a 9 for his game. Let's move along. Caleb Marchbank. He came in for Mitch McGovern. He was part of a backline that was probably beaten. How did Marchie go, Pommy, and those of you watching at home? How did you look at his game?
I always try and err on the side of let's not be negative. The new and improved Pom has been pretty good at not pot-shotting players in the last year and a half. He was very poor. And for me, anyone who watched the VFL in his lead up to this, it was no surprise. This was VFL Marchbank. It was positioning, looked like it was trying to help him get to the ball first, which I think he's lost a yard of pace, and I'd love to know the data behind it, but he definitely has lost a yard of pace. He got bodied, and I think the most normal passage of play that would describe him, it was when Riley West shoulder barged him out of a marking contest, and there's a lot of meterage between both of them in that height. It was a poor game. And I felt for him because I don't think he was ready. I think the VFL showed it, and I'd love to know Voss's. I'd never question Voss. This is one that I would love to have a beer and say, why was Marchbank chosen over everyone else when I think Durdin and Young have been far, far superior to Caleb Marchbank?
Yeah, this was, just for context, this was his 63rd game in the 10 seasons that he's been in the league, which tells a story in itself. That goal where he just got out-positioned by Riley West, I thought was a little telling. I think, early in the season, he came back from injury straight into the side. We all had a conversation around that. Should he have played in the VFL before coming in? This time around, he's played a few games in the VFL for touch. He's just not moving with the same belief, sharpness, reaction time. To be fair, a lot of them in this game and their reaction time was off. It's I'm a little curious about him. 12 months ago, he found his way back into the team, played the back end of the season, and played and was one of our best in the prelim. Right now, I'm not seeing that same spark from him when he gets his opportunity. So I don't know where that leaves us. Is it one game and you got to give him another one because McGovern might miss another one, or is it one game and you've seen enough and maybe it's Lewis Young?
I think synergy is huge, and you did see it. Marchbank was guilty of flying up on marks on Kemp and Weitering as well, and that wasn't happening with McGovern, but it was at the start of the year as they got used to each other. Kemp was often guilty of getting in the way of Weitering and McGovern, and then he ironed that out by about game 4. So I think you're at the situation now. Now it's Marchbank. He has to play next week because you bring in Lewis Young, you're probably going to get the same issue. So, and Lewis Young chose the worst VFL game this week as well.
I know.
He was bobbing. So cheers, Louis, mate. So I want to see Marchbank again. I think you can get too pedantic at removing players. If McGovern's not fit, Marchbank again.
Yeah, fair enough. Does this put a question? Does this put a maybe looking too far ahead? But does this scenario put more of an emphasis on what we need in the off season in terms of key position defenders? Because I mean, Sam Durdin, Lewis Young not getting a look in right now. Marchbank hasn't been able to get a clean run at it. Is this a position we need to start looking at now, or is it too early to have that conversation?
Well, I think you need like for like. So McGovern's the closest we've got to Marchbank ever. So you probably, Lewis Young is basically going to be the lockdown, stay-at-home defender, which you need, who's ready to play. So probably ideally you want someone who's a bit creative, like is that a Luke Trainer, intercept marker, baby, learning the role. It's easy to bring in. So you probably need, at the moment, I feel like off our backmen who were replacements are kind of real Audi version. So if we can get a 25-year-old intercept defender, which they're hard to find, to be honest.
Yeah.
Is that a buslinger who's not getting played? And we look at another Blake Acres type, someone who's underappreciated. It's going to be interesting. Tough question, Terry. I mean, yeah, if they're easy to find, every bastard would have one.
Fair. I'm with you. I want to see him play one more. Hopefully the speed of it all comes to him. And we'll go from there. So he gets a 4 for his game. Let's move along. Talk about Brody Kemp. How'd you watch his game?
This was a guy under pressure because playing for this football club, you have one mildly poor game and the knives come out. And you saw, I really did think you saw Kemp's worst game last week. And then you saw Marchbank, who hasn't played. I mean, let's be fair to Marchbank. He hasn't played senior football for what feels like an eternity. It's a long time ago. 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 9 weeks is an eternity in football. I thought he was really strong in his return. He had to. It was a backline that is very tricky. Hugo Hagan, Sam Darcy's 9'8". It's tough. And I thought he marched and he presented well. I don't think he was helped by the backline movement this week. And that was really a struggle. But this was an okay game from him. If this is your worst standard, fantastic. Fantastic if this is your worst game. And I think this was an improvement in Kemp. He had to bounce back and he bounced back.
I don't know. I found him to be a little fumbly and a little lacking in himself. There was a couple of them that did it. I think the passage of play that probably defines how I watched him was the great intercept mark that he took. Had he not taken the mark, it was looking like a 3-on-1. Jamari Ugle-Hagan, Sam Darcy, I think McNeil were right in the vicinity of the ball. Then he kicked it out in the full straight away. Had the little head clash moments later. And then he just seemed to be inches off for me. His marking was a feature, but I hope he doesn't dip too far in that lack of confidence that he has showed at times. I hope he's able to respond, work his way through it, find it again. Because this is an important part of the year. And this is kind of what happened in the back end of last year. Lost his position in the side. But I think he's well equipped to be better this year around.
I think a huge part of his game is it's the same as Weitering. I mean, Weitering had an elite number of intercept marks, didn't get any transition for the Blues. So this is his strength as well, Kemp's. When the midfield is offering nothing, he's going to be exposed, as is Stephen May, as is all the top interceptors. Look at Tom Stewart. We did a number on him. So I felt defensively he was fairly good. Nice and solid. not brilliant, not shocking, but
Yeah.
when there's nothing ahead of you, you're going to be exposed. And unfortunately, Mitch McGovern is the only medium tall player we've got who can pull a rabbit out of his arse with a kick.
Yeah.
And that's a rare gift. Rare gift to be as good as him.
6.5 makes perfect sense. I like it. Let's talk about Adam Saad. I thought he was one of our better defenders on the day, even though there were holes to pick. I mean, there were holes to pick apart in everyone's game. But had you watched Saadi this week?
I think for someone that has played with this Blues backline a lot, and especially the midfield, he really showcased that maturity, and he got the overlap run. And there was a few times, particularly in the third, when I think Carlton were absolutely deplorable. I think the third was probably our worst structurally. You saw him took the game on. He took the game on, and he tried to get something going, and he was grossly let down by those around him. There was that great passage of play where he picks it up one-handed and he beats three men by foot. And you can see he's looking round to offload it to give the give and go. And in the end, he just dribbles it down the wing. That's all he could do. And you watch that passage of play, and then you go back to 4 or 5 games ago. That was a handball. He beats the man. He gets the ball back. He bursts through, count and win. But this was a solid game from Adam Saad. And I'd imagine if Saad would have probably had a word with the players in front of him and says, "Look, you've got to help me. You've got to help me. I can't beat a team on my own."
Well, we spoke last week about wanting to see him generate, or wanting to see the ball in his hands a little bit more, running and carrying. On the rare occasion that we were proactive in the game, it was a bit ugly, but passage of play where he's running in the corridor, just gets the ball on his right foot, lands in Cripps' hands, then over to Charlie, I think it was. So from that point of view, we saw a little bit more proactive work. I want to see him with the same energy when we're playing better as a team, and that's going to make us dangerous. But I don't know, I gave him the doing a bit for the week. I liked his game.
Lou Foligno makes a cracking point as well. He mentioned it in my review as well. There was a bit this week and last week where we don't use his tools. We're literally giving it to him, so he's got work to do just to get himself set. And there was quite a few moments as well where he's looking to break from the back pocket, and the easiest kick under no pressure is behind him. So his momentum he's built, he's had to stop and go back, and that gives the forward chance to take away his blind side. So it's them little things that really do fuck you at this level, and that's one of them. It's heartbreaking to see, because Saad on his day can tear you apart, and I don't think he was helped this week. I don't think he was helped, but he was good.
He was. He gets an 8 for his game. Then we move over to Lachie Cowan. I had him in my top 3 defenders of the day. I don't know what his rating is going to be, but I thought he was one of our more reliable defenders on the day. I loved his game.
It's a real interesting conundrum with Cowan, because this week I'll put his meters gained up to highlight. Last couple of weeks, these have been huge. These have been huge for him, getting him going from defence to forward. This week, we saw him really have to cover Marchbank's frailty when he got higher up the ground. And that is a huge accolade to Mr. Cowan. To suddenly now he's had Nick Martin when everyone's bailed on him. And this week, he's helping a senior player. Shows how much Carlton rate him. His work on the ground, he's probably the only player in our backline who was any good when the ball hit the ground, which is a worry when he's so big. His tackles, anything he sees, he stops. He's becoming a real asset to Carlton. And he's someone that will probably be looking at Mitch McGovern and going, if I can hone my craft in a year or two, that's my role, the star of this backline. I really liked his game, and it showed versatility to have to change your role, because the last couple of weeks, that offense has been off the charts. This week, he had to knuckle down and defend, and I thought all in all, he did pretty well.
Yeah. I I reckon I remember the exact kick, which probably gained us 40 or so meters. The little quick thinking sidestep to get around maybe Waitman. He just shows more signs of reliability every time he plays. So I was a fan of his game. Big fan of what he did. Let's have a look. 6.5. Solid. Now we get to Nick Newman. Mate, this might have been the first time I watched Nick Newman play and say, oh, okay, he's had an off day. I think that's just overall what it was for him. Did some important things as he always does, but overall I thought this was an off day.
Voss really rotated heavily the backline matchup, so it's really hard. So, there was a comment on Twitter saying Jamar Ugle-Hagan battered Kemp. And, I read it, and I was just like, oh, God. This is why I have to go to the doctors to get upgrades on my migraine tablets. Because these matchups were so in favour of the Dogs because the Dogs were fantastic at rotating their matchups all the time. And the Blues had to shore holes. And Nick Newman was the hole shorer. And it was quite interesting that you're going to see our wingers in a minute and you're going to see where we suddenly reacted and started penning ourselves back. Nick Newman had no help from the midfield. And this week he had to shelve himself from being that overlap run to plugging a gap. And this gap here was Bailey Dale and Bontempelli having Banterville down our right-hand side. Strong numbers defensively, but usually so reliable. And this week he reacted to the pressure, and he reacted as a direct consequence of no midfield help and options. And he was trying to thread it through and trying to be precise. And ultimately, he made mistakes, and that's what happens. That's what happens when the options are easy and you've got to take the tough option. It's going to backfire.
Yeah. No doubt. Yeah, just the broken tackles, the split moment, clumsy moments, giving away a few free kicks, fumbles at stoppage, just little things like that. I mean, these are all things that are so easily fixed. That's why I think a lot of us can see that. I'm not panicking about it because there's quite a few guys who will get through who are pretty fumbly, pretty clumsy, and just not completely switched on to the level that they can be. And to see how much we were still able to, be in a winning position, that's where I'm still optimistic. But yeah, Newman is human after all.
And that was poetic, mate. I mean, we haven't seen a Newman dummy spit for a while, and I'd never advise him how to do his job, but I would love to see him channel that anger where he gave away the free kick into communication. I think that's his next evolution of Newman. I'd love to see him just pull Cripps to one side and say, look, mate, can you have a word with your dickheads who are around you? Get them to move and stop being so fucking static. Because I can't polish a turd. And it's really interesting if he can do that. That's the next evolution of him. Just calming the temperament and using that as vocalize it a little bit more. So, I mean, what can he do? I mean, that's a pretty high rating because you've got to look. The numbers were pretty good. It was the application, and that's probably the team. That's the team review. Right? The intent was there. The application was in another realm.
Yeah. It's literally like 3 or 4 moments that are just uncharacteristic for him, which you totally...
And costly.
Yeah. And he's just not one that has too many of those moments. So a 6.5 kind of balances it out. Is that the defense as a whole? I think it is. Maybe we can pause for a quick minute.
A hot minute.
How much of the blame for the scores against do you apportion to the midfield and the defensive group?
90% to the midfield. 90%. I mean, I don't want to give too much away because I've put a lot of work into the greatest video of Carlton YouTube history that comes later on tonight, but we do cover it quite at length. But the biggest stat everyone talks about at the moment, because fuck's sake, who would have thought maths is complicated beyond year 7? But is Carlton 15th scores against, which is bottom 4. And that's results-based analysis. If you work in sport and you work in high-level business or whatever you work in, you've got to be process analysis. You've got to use process. And it's amazing that our stoppage and midfield scores are the difference between being 15th in scores against and being top number 1, which where Sydney is. And that's the major difference. The one major difference between Sydney and us is our stoppage in midfield scores against. And you see it. You've only got to watch the third, fourth quarter. Everyone in chat saw it who was watching. I'm sure people at the game were watching it. Cowan would turn the ball back over in defensive 50. And then you look ahead. And there was no moves other than kick the ball long. That was all they had. And then you wonder why the midfield turn it back over, because they were too far away. Mm-hmm. Like, fuck me. Like, Marchbank, we've panned him tonight, but Jesus Christ, would it have hurt someone to help him? Would it have hurt the midfield to track a man? It's not that hard. Simple stuff. But you saw it against Sydney. You saw it this week. You saw it last week. And you saw it first quarter against Richmond. When the boys don't move and look proactive, they get exposed. And we're good at exposing other sides. We're not very good when we're exposed. And
totally.
It's tough.
All right. Tough. We're going to go through the midfield now and see what we uncover. We'll start on one of the wings here. So Ollie Hollands, we noted that he wasn't named on the wing because Cottrell was. We'll touch on Cottrell shortly. How do you watch Ollie's game?
Please to Christ, make this stop. Honestly. My pop used to say, you've got to be careful what you wish for, son, because sometimes you have to bear the fruits of your wishes. And I have begged for wingers. Did I think I would see our wingers become halfback flankers and then not become half forwards? And the great wingers in this game who run two ways, they become half forwards when the ball's won back. And Ollie, God bless him, exposed on Bontempelli twice. He won once, and I'll give him that. Frantic effort, but this isn't the play. This isn't the play. You look at all the first, second, third year runners in this league, they're playing offensive roles. They're getting the cushy job, and fair play to Ollie. He's doing what he can do. But Ollie ain't Errol Goulden, and Ollie ain't Blake Acres yet. Disposal efficiency really solid. This is an improvement what we've seen the last couple of weeks. The metres gained, I can cope with 229 metres. The 25 pressure acts, I can see. But for the first time, we haven't seen him in the top 5 of metres ran. Why? Because he literally was playing halfback. We didn't see Nick Newman overlap him this week because they got stogged. And this is where you really need that creative outlet on the wing. And I felt for Ollie because it's not his fault. I'm being critical of him, but he shouldn't be in this position. He shouldn't be in this position. For me, that was negligent on the coaching department and the structure of this football club. He should have been playing higher up the ground and giving him something. So he does what he does, and unfortunately, he was exposed this week at the highest level.
Yeah. The criticism of him has been around. I mean, it's the surface level criticism is that he doesn't win enough of the ball. So we definitely saw that. With Cottrell in their side, I would have thought their heat maps would have been. I mean, I haven't seen Cottrell's yet. We'll get to him. Maybe I need to see Cottrell's before I comment. But I'm surprised to see him this far behind the halfway line.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I mean, tactics in any sport are synergy, right? You've got to have a symbiotic relationship. It's like the little mollusks that live on whales, and then you know what I mean. Everything works together. At the moment, we're putting a shark on a whale.
Yeah,
we want a mollusk, or them little sucker fishes. That's getting clipped. There we are. I can't wait to see that one sent back to me.
So a 3.5 for Ollie. That's tough. That's tough to see. Is this another case of hold firm? We've brought Cottrell back into the side. They need some time to re-synergize.
I don't quite understand the logic of playing 3 full-time wingers, to be honest. So, I mean, you've moved Newman back this week to be more defensive. I can't explain to you. I try to help Voss out. I can't explain why this guy didn't play almost a half forward on that right hand side. So, but he's a baby, man. He's 2 years into it. If you watch the interview I did with Nick Power, kids fatigue very quickly, and I feel like you're seeing that. And he's miles ahead of Binns, which is a huge plus for him. Go into the VFL and have a couple of cushy weeks and give someone else this job, because it's not a fun job.
Yeah. Another surface level thing that I think we need to be careful to say is, he's got to put on 4 or 5 kilos in the off season. One of the most fascinating insights I took away from your interview with Nick was, I mean, for us who are not in strength and conditioning, it's a real easy comment to make. I'll just put on size, but it's a gradual process. Ollie, 4 or 5 kilos in one preseason will have him having, potentially at risk of stress fractures like Cottrell last year. So patience is a hard word to say when you're a Carlton fan, but Ollie, I mean, he just played his 35th game, played his 16th for the season. So there is a bit of perspective there. I guess what I'm about to ask is, we want to win now, but we want to also invest in the future. So what's the balance of running power in the side and, seeing George Hewitt in that, in the twos, and, have we taken away our contest in exchange for investing in the future and greater running power?
SPS. Sometimes struggle, sometimes stubbornness ruins careers. SPS is the greatest example. Came to the club as a mid-forward who could potentially destroy on the ball. Started his career mid-forward, showed some signs. Then there was a stubbornness to keep him on the ball too long. Eventually bashed his confidence. Then they moved him to the forward pocket, the back pocket. Before you saw it, he didn't know what he was anymore. Always a risk there. It's not as simple as dropping him and bringing someone else in, because like people say, bring Binns in, bring Koning in, bring Motlop in. Fucking, I've even seen people say, why can't you just drop him and play Pittonet? This role is so defined, man. And if you've ever commented, we're flirting with form, and then your next thing is, I'd play Cunners over Hollands. Congratulations for winning Dan Williams Pomming Aussies award for the stupidest comment of all time. Because you are ruining the balance by definition, because at the moment, Ollie Hollands protects the halfbacks to overlap. If you're going to play Cunningham at halfback, we might as well give up and just take pick one, your right bands. So we've got to find that nuance. Is it Newman's full-time halfback? You play someone higher up the ground and then you swing someone on the interim. You've got to really, really, really be nuanced on that. So Ollie Hollands, for me, it's tough. It's tough, but he does need a rest. And based on what we saw this week, halfback flank looks like Newman's coming back as a full-time halfback flanker. So it gives you an option, because Cottrell's lost at the moment as well. There's a few players who are playing at the moment. It's like they don't know their role, and it's so nuanced. It's tough.
Well, like we said with Cottrell last week, I mean, 3 months ago, he looked undroppable. And now he just looks like a guy. Cerra's going to be the same when we touch on him. They look like guys that have just missed a chunk of footy and are realigning with the team. And the team's evolved since they were in the side. So,
yeah. I mean, it's the whole thing. 25 touches Golden used to have first year. And it's like, yeah, the ball went down that wing 300 times. Goes down his wick about 20 and he gets 8 touches. He's actually fucking doing well. God bless him.
All right. So that's Ollie. Gets a 3.5. Then we'll talk about the skipper, Patrick Cripps. His 200th game. Tried his mighty hard out. Just wasn't enough. Really lifted as the game, zeroed into the end as well.
Probably the most fitting tribute, if we're honest, and I didn't care about results. Was just leaving it alone to him till the fourth.
So true. It was a real reflection on what he's had to deal with for 200 games.
Do you know what I mean? It's probably it. I mean, contested possessions, he did well there. Ground ball gets elite. This is Cripps. Like Cripps' 200th game, Cripps presented the world with what Cripps is about. Everything elite. The poster boy. I mean, yeah, he feels like Michael Caine in Zulu at times. Do you know what I mean? The hero that the screen cuts to black and you know he's dead, but you knew he fought to the last bullet against all odds. And that's the wonderful thing about Cripps. And yeah, it was a shame that players didn't do it. I saw some comments which I think are real true. Sometimes you've got to criticise every player if you're going to be fair. There was a few handballs where he handballed into trouble, but I felt like this week his midfield went back to 2019, 2020, and they weren't overlap running and giving him the help. So suddenly Cripps was like, shit, you've got to be me, and burst through packs. I thought he held up under duress. It was him versus Bontempelli and Liberatore at times, and he was absolutely fantastic. So, you know what? Sorry we couldn't get it done for you 200, mate. We'll get it done 201.
So, like I said earlier, across the board, there was an air of clumsy, fumbly, disjointed moments. Cripps had moments where he fumbled as well. His ability to mentally figure it out, I think, needs to be studied. He by the end of the game, he was able to figure it out because they all had this really weird air of just off milk by a day. Only just. And only a few of them were able to work their way out of it. So it's a shame we couldn't get a win for his 200th game. I also loved how he refused to not be carried off. Doesn't that say something?
He's a winner. He wants to win. And you see some comments on social media, he's won fuck all and stuff. You know what? There's something bigger than winning a flag. And that's been remembered when you die. And Cripps has already done that. And you know what I mean? Less than 1% of the world will be remembered when they become worm food. So Cripps has already done that. So in my opinion, you can say he's a winner. He's got standards there. I felt for him, but this was as good as Cripps gets. We were fumbly, and the whole pace conversation comes up when we lose. But do you know what I mean? We're quick when we're destroying teams like Geelong and Brisbane and things like that. We're slow when we lose. The pace ahead of him was poor. The movement ahead of him, but Cripps 9.5 used to do this in 2018 as well. Great performance from the skip. Absolutely.
All right, let's move along. Blake Acres. Oh, this is interesting. I know that the way that the teams are named on Thursday nights doesn't always tell you the story of how it's going to play out. But I recall us making comment on the teams that he was named on the left side. But it looks like he spent a lot of time on the right side here.
Yeah, this is more of a reflection. So these heat maps are really interesting because you can learn a lot about heat maps when you use context and you start looking at all the things. So it's like Ollie Hollands. When you look at disposals and you judge against wingers, you're going to fight a losing job. And your narrative is probably Ollie Hollands is shit and you want to prove it. Same with this. So he did start on the left, and he, as Blake Acres does, and the fluidity of our zonal defence, which all the teams play, is you go where the hot spots are. And this is the wing that they attacked. Bailey Dale breaking off left half back, right for us, going down here. And Blake Acres' ability to get to contest airily. There is a passage of play where he punches and spoils it for a behind. And he actually took the spoil at the wing on the right-hand side. And he's managed to get himself down back before anyone else to make that spoil. And these numbers are really strong. And this is what Ollie's got to maybe look towards in the future. And I can see why they're doing it, because Blake Acres started as a halfback flanker as a kid. You can see why they're doing it. They want this two-way running. It's just the difference is night and day between Blake Acres, because Blake Acres is a man. Ollie Hollands is a baby man. But real strong game from Blake. Did everything he had to do. Everything he had to do.
Yeah. Yeah, he's 28 years old with 162 games under his belt. And Ollie is 20 years old with 35 games under his belt. It's all the context.
Interesting to
needed.
note, we did that on Teams with you, Footy Abroad. Josh Dacos and Ollie Hollands, you can split them with a knife edge their first 2 years. So,
yeah.
But this is experience, man. This is what 200 odd games of experience and heartache does.
Absolutely. So a 7 for Blake. As we move along, we get to Lachie Fogarty. How'd you watch Fogs? Played a little bit more further up the ground.
Last 2 weeks, he's almost been a mid/forward, and
So
it's no surprise that Carlton. Pardon?
I said, is it like what we were seeing from Fantasia's role? A little bit of that?
Yeah, it's funny because we've kind of like made up roles in this year. And this is a really interesting one with Fog because I was shocked when Kennedy wasn't starting. The Hewitt one I can cop. Like, Voss has got an idea. Stick with it, mate. You're paid big bucks. But then moving Fog to play the Kennedy role because you haven't played Kennedy and Hewitt is mind-boggling. And this was definitely the extra rotation that Voss has to have in the midfield. You need 6 or 7 people in there. And it's no surprise our forward half pressure has been diabolical since he's gone. This guy's the metronome, and unfortunately he couldn't do it. And the fact that he still had forward 50, he still led the way in loose ground ball gets in the forward 50 when he played almost 40% in the middle of the ground, says it all. Do you know what I mean? When you're leading the tackles inside 50 count, do you know what I mean?
With 1.
It's a worry. But yeah, this is not his role. This is his natural job, incidentally, from Geelong, but we need him as far forward as possible.
If Motlop's in the side, is this Motlop?
Yeah, I think so. Just play an extra mid, though. Why are you playing extra wingers? Play an extra mid.
True. Yeah, it's a real tinkering, eh? Let's have a look. A 6.5 for Lachie Fogarty. Let's talk about Alex Cincotta. I wonder if the role was Treloar and if that impacted his preparation mentally for the game. Because then he was on Bont, then he was on Bailey Dale. I'm telling you now, no one has a harder job than this guy week to week as an assignment.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? And inside 50s, huge. A tackle, setting up the play. We actually saw this guy impact.
Yeah.
Impact. Real interesting. The first quarter. This is another thing that I'd love to ask Voss. I'd love to get just 5 minutes a week to ask him a question and just say, look, just explain it to me so I can understand, so I can analyse better. But this is another thing that I'd love to ask Voss. He went on Bontempelli the first quarter and absolutely took the piss. Bontempelli struggled. Really struggled in that first quarter. And I was like, this makes sense now. It made sense why Kennedy wasn't playing, why Hewitt wasn't playing. You're going to take the big boy out. It allows Cripps to go one-on-one with Liberatore, frees up Walsh and Cerra. Then the move was made to Bailey Dale that in the first quarter, I thought Bailey Dale was Tom Stewart. He had nothing to kick to. So that was a win. That was a huge win. So Bailey Dale can have 50 touches all he wants. But if he's got no one to kick to, who cares? Bailey Dale's just a big, cumbersome halfback. Surprised that he changed it, but he was game. He was game. And when Fogarty went out, the only one who looked like he was willing to do anything was this guy. And the score involvements, all positive ground ball gets. This was a very more of a run-with role in the forward half of the ground. And he popped up on everyone in the third and fourth quarter.
Yeah.
It was Liberatore, he had 5 minutes on. Bailey Dale, he went to Riley West and forward stoppages. Like, Cincotta must have been confused. But he did it. And Pomcotter is one of our favourites. So, fantastic performance and one who will hold his head high.
I felt as the game inched closer towards the end and needed more people to lift, he was one that definitely did.
Mate, he had his moments. Strong and very good performance.
7 for Alex Cincotta. Matty Cottrell. There's the left wing. So he ran the 15 Ks, 18 meters gained. That tells a story there. No inside 50s, 1 scorer involvement. So these are stats that are based on, the key metrics for players in their role. So obviously he's a fit player, but he just wasn't able to impact much, if at all, was he?
Where's the Ollie Hollands haters now?
Yeah.
The wing of death.
True.
The wing of death. This is tough, this. For me, the most obvious change in this game, and I watched the game twice now. I watched the game and I was like, the most obvious change is put this gentleman on Bailey Dale. Put this gentleman on Bailey Dale. Because Bailey Dale's strength ain't his kicking, it ain't anything. It's his ability to run hard all day. And he grinds you out with the give and go. He's so smart at it. And I was like, we've done it before. Cottrell plays that half back. And he just follows him all day. And he takes away the give and go. And it never happened. And we never went down the left side. Hard gut running, though, from him. The 15K is like, people use that phrase, running for nothing. You never run for nothing with 15K. Do you know what I mean? It means you're one of the few who was trying to make options. That backline in the fourth, people have slated Cottrell. There's about 7 times that a backman could have kicked to him with no one on him, and they did not look. It's a real worry for me here because last week we saw him play the Fantasia role. That's been shelved. This week we put him on the wing. Help him. You've got to help him. And
you've got to help him
all
out.
movement helps.
Yeah. 3.5 for Cots. How do we see this going? Is this just to keep persisting with it?
Wait, it's not fitness. He's ran 15 Ks.
15 Ks, yeah.
So
touch.
End that argument. What you've got to do is you've got to find a way to get him in. You've got to find a way to get him invested. And for me, don't care what people say, I don't think he's a winger. I've always stated this, that I think when we moved him to that half forward, that was when he increased. And I think it's really easy to manipulate that because when we come to Elijah, we'll see his role, we see his impact. So, do you know what I mean? It's there, but there's nothing wrong with this game other than the fact Carlton didn't know the left-hand side of the ground existed in transition.
Yeah.
What's he meant to do? Can't have touches for laughs. And if he started to move to the right wing, you watch how quickly they go down the other side.
Yeah. But if he's playing more of a run-with role on, say, Bailey Dale in this game, you've got Cincotta playing a hard stopping role, Cottrell playing in a similar role. Is that too many?
Well,
and is that taking away from
when it's a pure tag role, like it was with Bontempelli, you saw Cincotta have hardly any touches. He had 2 touches when he was on him. So that takes a player out of the game. When it's a run with role where he's done really, really good, he's still going to get the ball. But what he's doing is he's just trying to take them short give and goes away. I feel that's his natural position. But I think Voss is working it out. What you're seeing at the moment is this week Voss was like, right, okay, this doesn't work. Didn't work last week. Let's move you back to your normal position. Let's move Blake and Ollie more defensive. Newman back to the halfback, and it didn't quite work, but he's working through it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we've got an abundance of riches. 6 weeks ago, there was 23 fit players. Now Voss is saying, right, okay, let's try and work this out. And he's having to work on the fly.
It's a new problem. 3.
Good problem to have.
Great problem to have. 3.5 for Cots. Let's move along. Talk about Harry. I think for the second week running, in the first quarter or first half, quickly asserted himself as a real dominant force in the game. I don't really understand why he fell away so much. Is that just credit the opposition?
We got a little bit excited, and one of my fears in my preview was, if we just keep bombing it in? If we look at Buku Karmis and Rory Lobb, do we just get inside 50 heavy and think, let's do it? Because I said you had to target them. And I wanted the midfield to look at this and go, look, if we can have one extra kick, get it in deep, we win this game. There's no way they can hold it out. The problem was they just kept bombing. And eventually it was very easy for them. Solid first half, though. And he led so well, but he was let down as well, especially statistically, with no one running behind him. He was creating space, and he drew Rory Lobb into some dangerous areas. We didn't capitalise by going ahead of him at the time. So it was a strong game, and it was a selfless game from Harry, because I feel like Harry could have maybe been deployed at full forward. I think maybe other coaches might have said, full forward, you, just bomb it on you.
Yeah.
But it didn't quite happen for him. But you know what? He was game all game.
Look, he's kicked his 3. He's had 5 scoring shots for the game. I just saw him so engaged early. I think when he had the rundown tackle early in the game, then got on the scoreboard early, and then again, it was looking ominous, and it just wasn't to be. But still did his job. So he gets a 7 for his game. Then we get to TDK. Wow, this is very interesting. I don't think I've seen him look like this on a heat map ever.
So you saw here, this was a big change up for the Blues, where the pressure is usually enacted forward of centre. Carlton started to have a wall here, and in the end, we said it in the watch along, Carlton's biggest trick is them intercepts from the kick-in. So where they go to the back pockets. And how often do you see Harry take that intercept, Elijah spoil it, Blake Acres spoil it? We started to get further and further back to eventually, on average, in the second half, the Dogs had 2 kicks until they met a Carlton player. So think how far up the ground you are. You're almost outside of your 50. And it was a bizarre little thing that the Blues did. And I felt like TDK's strength is his ability to work around the ground. We kind of deployed him as this defensive stopper, which is how you probably would have deployed Pittonet. If you had your time again, you would have said, right, Pittonet, he's not going to move that much. Let's put him in these danger rods, just try and mix it up. And you can see he was the outlet ball a lot. So it was a struggle for him, because the 2 areas we have been frothing TDK is score launches and clearances. None. Really?
Yeah. I thought, and again, he's still going to get better. I thought this was one of the worst I've seen him in ruck for his career. I thought the third quarter in particular, all but 3 of the contests in that third quarter were against Darcy, and I saw him lose 3 in a row. And I just couldn't believe him. I can kind of understand maybe he gets a little bit pushed around by English at times, given English has got more experience on him. But, I mean, he was losing hitouts to Sam Darcy. And I don't know if he's sore from last week. I don't know how much the ankle's affecting him. But if he had have played the entire game on his own in the ruck, I probably would have been more concerned. Then on the other end, in my mind, I'm starting to think, is it because there's another ruck there that's getting him a little out of sync? I don't know the full context of his situation, but I thought when Pitto was in the ruck, we didn't look like we were, hemorrhaging, getting our hands on the ball. But when Tom was in the ruck, I felt we were.
I think the big thing is ruckmen are kind of like fast bowlers in cricket. They need a couple of overs to get a rhythm, and once they find the rhythm, you're going to see wickets.
Yeah.
This week was the most bizarre split of 2 ruckmen I've ever seen. And usually we have one who's the dominant ruckman. Usually you see Carlton go 60-40, 70-30, and it's usually that makeup, and it allows TDK, when he has been the second ruck, to play around the ground. This week it was almost 50-50. There was 8 difference between them, which is really, really concerning, because that is really hard. Really hard to gain some momentum. And I think people forget Darcy's a giant as well. He's like 208 centimetres, and he had 210 or something. So you could see he was out of rhythm. He looked out of sync with himself. And it was amazing watching Pittonet win the taps, Carlton roaming to where TDK does. And then TDK, when he did win the taps, they started roaming to Pittonet. It looked like the most disjointed exercise ever. So I think if Pittonet does, if the two ruck system, one of them has to be the daddy. One of them has to be the daddy, and the other one has to have a defined role. It's what we say about two rucks all the time. This week, it looked like both were playing ruck. Because when you watch Pittonet's heat map, you would have thought I'd copied and pasted this one.
Yeah. I don't know. I was just concerned. I would have thought Tom's Ruckcraft would be able to beat Darcy in those contests. He lifted a bit more in the fourth, but that third quarter on the replay, I'm watching. I'm like, Tom, what's happening? But that's okay. He gets a 5.5 for his game. We'll move along. We'll get to Charlie. Wow. He definitely had his opportunities to tear this game apart. 3 goals, 7. Lots of score involvements. Just an inaccurate day for him. Any wonder why the rhetoric around Charlie goes to where it goes?
I mean, I know I'm a Charlie fanboy, so I'll curb it a little bit, but like just some of the things that I said about Charlie Curnow are so uneducated. It's laughable. Mm-hmm. But I think what you see with Charlie is the Buku Karmis matchup was really interesting. And we made this comment in the live. Some of the entries, it was like they'd forgotten Harry McKay likes it high.
Yeah.
Charlie likes it with pace. And it's an interesting thing because 3-7. You're half the split. 5-3, 5-4. Carlton win the game. Carlton win the game. This is a big thing with Charlie. His accuracy was really down this week. And it's a shame when you watch Charlie because you look at that passage of play, I think everyone picks on him where he kicked towards the goal. You kind of need that selfishness from your key. It's hindsight, like I said in the live.
I'm so happy that.
If you kick it to Ollie Hollands, with that passage of play, that brings the defender to Ollie Hollands. He handballs over the top. It's a goal in front of... It's a goal for Cripps out the back. Easy to say when you sat biscuit-arsed, having a cup of tea, watching the game under no pressure. But Charlie needs to take them games. But there has been moments where Charlie has won games single-handedly for us, and this wasn't one of them. He'll beat himself up. Speaking to Charlie when he's lost before, he'll punch himself in the face about it, but he was in the right positions, just didn't take his opportunities.
Yeah. This passage of play, I'm glad you brought it up. He was not on his own. There was a defender running with him. Why last week was the conversation around we need him to lift for us? I thought he tried everything in his power to lift for us. He was just inaccurate. I actually thought he played well, but for the accuracy. I thought he got involved, but for the accuracy. I'm bemused at the standard we're trying to put onto him. I thought
Terry, you make a great point. I mean, you really do. You really make a good point. Is like that passage of play. Look, I'm going to draw it now. Look, right?
Like to say that he's selfish, I think is a really poor choice of words. To highlight that passage of play, you got Ollie Hollands there, mate. You've got the fucking 2-time Coleman medalist who can kick the ball from 60 on the run to an open goal square. He just missed.
Like, if you look, that's how the passage of play lined up. Like, do you know what I mean? You had Curnow there, Ollie Hollands there. Now, if we're going to be super critical of him, in an ideal world, he would have chip kicked it to Ollie. That would have moved the defender to go to the mark. He would have handballed over the top of a Cripps. Go back and watch that play. It was 2 seconds. 2 seconds he had to react, right? One of the leading score involvement players. And you know, the big thing that actually kicks me in the dick is Charlie doesn't put any effort in. The number one pressure indicator in the forward line that all senior coaches look for, all drum home. And you know what? A forward coach told me this when I was doing analysis on small forwards. He said, forward 50 ground ball gets is the key that we look for. The fact he led that for our team says that he did it. It was just a shocking efficiency day. But if you went at AFL average, we win that game. We win that game. And you know what? Do I blame him for having a punt at goal?
Mate,
no.
Bugs Bell, thank you. They take responsibility. So we don't want to call him unselfish when he handballs to Cripps for Cripps's goal to lift the team, sensing the moment. But we only want to highlight that passage of play where there was a bit 50-50, Cripps running into that goal. He just missed. I just think we're way too harsh on Charlie here.
If that had gone through, I guarantee you now, he wins. We win the game. That goal, 65 out, goes through. The momentum wins the game. That wins the game. Like what you've got to be careful of, and trust me, there is a very famous player for Carlton, right, who left this football club. And I was chatting to him a few months back, and one of his big things he said to me was the fear of being over-analysed took away his natural game, and he tried to add layers that he wasn't natural at. For me, this is the big thing. You don't want to coach that out of Charlie, because people forget last week he kicked a goal from the almost identical position off a step. So you want him to be doing that. You want Charlie's first thought is, I will do it. I will do it. I will bring this team alive. So, like, Joshua, I've got to say, mate, like, honestly, mate, get yourself on Tinder. Find someone to talk to. This isn't the place. I ain't paid enough to be your dad or your wife. Your comments are uneducated, they are moronic, and they are up there with the single stupidest things I've ever heard. Do you know what I mean? And that is impressive, because I'm 38 years old. So to be considered in the top 3 of the most stupid people I've ever met, that is fucking huge. You've done really well. You've done really well there. Congratulations. Jesse Hogan is a better player than Charlie Curnow, and we should think about dropping him. Fuck me. Honestly, they give awards for that. If you flip it. Oh, honestly. Type of person, honestly. They give awards if you flip. So if you go from being that stupid to that smart, you actually get fucking awards. Like, that is unbelievable. Like, have a word with yourself. Like, I am sorry your life is so miserable and hardship. You've got to bully a guy that has won 2 Coleman medals and is fucking trying to win the game for your football team. And that's how you repay him. Like, that is unbelievable. Like, fucking have a word with yourself. These are real human beings. It wasn't a great game from Charlie. And I guarantee you now, he won't be sat at home drinking his brand of beer. He will be sat at home beating himself up. Because unlike you, I have sat and had the privilege of speaking with him. And I'll tell you what, he listed every mistake he's ever made that season when I talked to him. Tell you he will be fucking hurting. So, you know what, Charlie, if you're watching this, mate, go out there next week and fucking destroy North Melbourne. And I want you to stick 2 fingers up at the camera and say that one's for you, Josh Kidder.
Yeah. I thought he looked back to his dangerous best, but for the accuracy, again, he'll be fine. He's kicked 49 goals for the year. Anyway, not really much more to say.
Right.
I know, 10 scoring shots, 13 scoring involvements. But he doesn't work hard enough. Okay.
And Ace Grape, you're right, he's a troll. But you know, the biggest problem with this country, Australia, this great beloved country, is stupidity isn't called out, it's accepted. And I am a man of standards. So I will set the standard. And if you fall short of my standard in chat, I'll fucking let you know. Yeah. Because I expect perfection and intelligence.
Let's move along. We're going to talk about Marc Pittonet.
So you remember what I said about TDK? This is very weird when you watch 2 ruckmen. Genuinely, 2 ruckmen complement each other. And this is really weird that they played the same role. So this would be another question for Michael Voss. You played 2 ruckmen, which is obvious. Your thought process pre-game would be what, chat? One of them would be beating up Tim English, being harsh. TDK would be roaming and having a bit of excitement and trying to get the game going. They played the identical role, which is the first question mark. When they were almost 50% in the ruck contest, another question mark because you haven't prioritised one. And this was a weird one from Pittonet because he won the hit-outs, did incredibly well, which we expect him to do. But the rest of the avenues was really poor, The output was bad. And this is a real interesting thing here because we didn't get it going. And this was a big 2 out of 10, the two ruckmen this week. And it kind of helped. It kind of helped the argument. Is it a 2-ruck system? Because based on what we've seen, it's not a 2-ruck system.
When you watch him play, what is his job? What do you want from him?
I want to see the ruckman work like ruckman. So if he's going to be the slow, cumbersome Sean Darcy type, I want him to have an auxiliary role. And this week, it was weird because we talked about it in VFL, Terry, how active he was behind the ball. He had a job that we saw them intercept marks and then he went forward. This week, it was almost like take your ruck contest, come onto the bench. Which I found so bizarre. Because last week, he had a defined role in the VFL. TDK this week was the same. It was like take it and then just kind of hang around. I want to see defined roles if you play 2 ruckmen, and that's how systems work. 1 rest forward, 1 rest back. It's a real bizarre one from Vossi, and I'd love him to come out and explain it because I felt for him. I
thought, when I watch him play, I'm looking for him to give us first use and to help create space for our midfielders at stoppage. He is a big part of our clearance dominance. I thought he did his job. I thought he did exactly what he needed to do to Tim English, which would then, in my mind, allow Tom to finish strong and use his athleticism and be fresh. I thought he held his end of the bargain up. I thought he was let down by some of his midfielders. There were so many passages of play that I noted down where he would win the tap perfectly to Cerra on a number of occasions who just fumbled, or to Cripps, or to Newman. There was another one there. And I don't know. I feel like if he was playing for another club, giving the output that he does, he would have a bigger reputation. But because we love Tom and we love the athletic generational talent conversation, this guy just gets so looked past and scapegoated. And it's weird.
I agree with you from the hit-outs perspective. I also agree with you that he did what he had to do. My next thing, though, I would say is that the next two, the 3 after the hit-outs, are the key metrics of all rucks. So these ruck stats, they don't care if you're Darcy, they don't care if you're gone. These numbers are huge for every ruckman. And the agility is a different metric. It wasn't good. There was times where I thought as well, and I found this bizarre, Pittonet could have taken it straight from the ruck contest like we see TDK did. He didn't. He always went to do it. He wasn't helped, though. I agree with you, Terry. Cerra, Walsh, Cripps looked like they'd never played with him. They were leading to stupid places. I do agree if he played for another club, he would be the solo ruckman. But if you're playing a ruckman, it has to be 70%. 70%, one ruckman. It looked way too disjointed when they were both doing half a job and then doing nothing around the ground. It was a very bizarre one from Pittonet. And I felt for him because I don't think it's his fault. I think this is a structural issue.
So next week, Sherry, is that the type of ruck that you need him in there for?
100%. 100%. I think he's definitely that type of guy that could do it. But you've got to look at it this way, Terry. We can't play them 50-50. One of them has to be the senior ruckman. And I don't care who it is. But one of them has to be the ruck. And then the other, because that's how it's meant to work, isn't it? TDK is meant to be the one running around the ground, agile, play Pittonet to his strengths. And I think resting him behind the ball in the VFL was his strength. He did it. He became an extra defender. Bang, it worked. it's not going to work if we're it felt like half committing to it. Felt like Voss half committed to it. And I would have loved to him say, nah, you're going to be the senior ruckman. TDK is going to work around the ground.
Yeah. So a 5 for Pitto. Interesting. Sam Walsh. Very rarely do I watch a game of Sam Walsh's the way I did this one. I watched the replay. I saw he had 27 possessions. And I was stunned. There was a beautiful kick to Harry on the lead, which I thought was just a peach of a moment. I don't know. Is it weird to say like a 27 possession game, 6 tackle, 17 pressure at game didn't feel like Sam Walsh? Is that a weird comment?
He's a victim of his stats.
Yeah.
Charlie Curnow, Harry. I mean, Harry is, in my opinion, nearly all Australian form. But because he had that Coleman 2 years ago, everyone's judging him on that metric, even the media, saying he's having a down year. I think his work around the ground has been exceptional. I think Walsh is in the same category. We're expecting 35 touches and taking the piss. And it's not quite happening. And he's going to have to work through it. I think we forget Cripps had these moments in his career. Mark Murphy had these moments in his career when he was a young pup. Even the great Judd had them up and down moments. And he's having to work through it right now where he's playing okay football, but he's a superstar. And let's look at it. Score involvement's way down. Clearances way down. Pressure acts are where it is. But this is the other issue. So please, I don't want to keep pushing it, but after the BA show, check the video out because we go into this in detail. I don't want to see Walsh having 6 tackles. I don't want to see Cerra having 6 tackles and being defensive. I want to be judging one of them on the offensive, aggressive stats. And this is felt really poor. Blue Bagger makes a great point. I'd love to see us take a leaf out of Sydney's book. Sydney's is really clever that they use one of these wings as an outlet. So they would play Cerra, Walsh, Nick Newman, Elijah Hollands, floating one wing and have a permanent Blake Acres on the other side, James Jordan. Feel that's the way to get him around this tag because the last 2 weeks he's had someone on him and we haven't helped him and it's got progressively worse. And after Bont's tag was removed, this really did affect Walsh because it was easy to pinpoint the inside-out handballs.
Yeah. He's going through a little bit. If this is one of his poorer games, then again, it shows the level that he's at.
Still a good game. I mean,
still a fine game.
Again, see what I said about Charlie. He's got to kick five of them goals. Same with Walsh. Walsh has got to destroy the game when he has the ball that many times.
Yeah. All right. So he gets a 6.5. Let's move along. Talk about Elijah. I'm liking what I'm seeing from him now that Cerra's come back into the side. He was one player I was mindful of, like how would his role be impacted? But he's continued to find a way to impact.
This is a real weird one from Lidge because since Cottrell's come in, we've seen him play less forward time, which logically you would say would mean Cottrell's playing half forward, but he's not. And this is a real interesting one. We saw him go to the wing this week, and Blake Acres kind of came out of the wing to accommodate that for him. And Elijah's really fascinating with this because he ran a lot of Ks. He was in the top 2 of Carlton's running this week again. Score involvements, 1 goal. It's interesting they moved him when there was a little bit of attention in the first quarter for him to try and help him out, but Walsh doesn't get that treatment. So this is a real interesting thing from the Blues watching these last 2 weeks. I think Voss has learned a lot that maybe a little bit more flux would be good. So I didn't mind his game, though. I thought he linked up well, and this was more of a new role than what he's had when he's been getting the 9s and 10s.
Yeah. Always love his work. 6.5 for Lidge. All right. Jordan Boyd. Corked shin the first quarter. I thought he, along with Newman, had probably the poorest games for the year. This was the first time I've watched Jordan Boyd play and thought, okay, the spark's not there today.
Again, see what we've said about all the backmen. You can't really judge them for when their weapons are hitting targets high up the ground, when the guys high up the ground have got the movement of a lemming, to be fair. But these are just above average stats as well. So even though they're green, they're like kind of greens you give your little brother when you play Mario Kart and just kind of let him get a bit closer than he should. The kicking efficiency was really down. He really did struggle with the pressure this week, and he was really exposed as well. Usually Carlton are trying to play someone at halfback and putting the bumps on and buying him space. That didn't happen. He was exposed there, and I felt for Boyd here because it's really interesting how we've handled forward pressure the last 2 weeks. We've got Beeper. The old Voss at the start of the year was being more aggressive, and that's where you're looking at your Boyd and your Saad. You're looking at them two and saying, fight fire with fire, and I felt like they were forced into that defensive role. It wasn't a great game from him. Makes me sad because I like Boydie.
Yeah, I love Boydie. I just think this was not Boydie's day. He's a 5 for him. Then we move along to Cerra. Really interesting to see this mimic the rucks. Thought it also wasn't Cerra's day. That's the most fumbly I think I've seen him.
It's real interesting that it feels very forced the last couple of weeks with Walsh and Cerra, and it seems like we're trying to really pigeonhole it and make it work, and it's not working. And again, look, 7 tackles. We know his defense is good. We know his ground ball games are good. He works really hard on the ground, but Walsh and Cerra need the ball in space. They need the ball in space. We don't want these guys pissing about finding it. We want one of them out in the open, like McKay is and things like that. And it struggled. It struggled this week, and he was really resigned to being like a stopping role in the second half, which when the game's there to be won, I want Walsh and Cerra having the ball in space. Things happen, and it didn't happen this week. And again, this is more of a structure coaching issue, I think, this week. It was interesting, Voss's presser. It did sound like a man that was putting his hands up saying that this was on him, not the players. And I felt like this was another case of it.
Yeah. 5.5, just a really uncharacteristic game from him. I thought he was building nicely. But look, that one, you just got to put it away. He is a class player. Class also personifying tough. And he's a high-quality player. He definitely will be better for that. That might be the worst we see him all year. Just in terms of his sharpness, in terms of his positioning at stoppage, in terms of his accountability for his man. It's not just on him. It's the group. But you have a high standard of Cerra because of the quality of player that he is.
They've got to work together, Terry. I mean, yeah, it was a game. This game was one of them games that if it was round 1, and you'd be like, okay, it's not quite there yet, but you're really seeing these players come back. This is his, 3rd game back?
Yeah.
You're seeing that synergy isn't quite there.
All right. 5.5. Last few. Matty Owies started perfectly. I can only imagine the watch along in the first quarter when he was putting 2 through. And nearly goal of the year as well.
Yeah, so 1 tackle inside 50. It says pressure acts. That's my mistake. I'm overworked and underpaid, chat. Forward 50 ground ball gets, joint on the ground with Mr. Curnow, you'll notice that it's green for him, not blue, because key forward and a small forward. 2 goals, took them well. Score involves. This was a real interesting one, because usually we've seen Fogarty, when Fogarty goes in the midfield, another forward is expected to be the little sexy provider. And Owies really struggled to get that Fogarty, Zach Williams type distributing it. And that's really not Owies' game. I feel like the perfect makeup of our team is one defensive forward, one really attacking one like this guy, and then one bits and pieces player who I think the Zach Williams injury has probably helped Motlop out, because that's what we're expecting Zach Williams to be, the conduit to link them all together. Interesting that this is how deep and defensive we got in that second and third. Look where Matty Owies is. Now, just ask yourself, is Matt Owies the guy that I want to be an exit kick? Yeah. If the answer is yes, it might be the reverse Brendan Bolton theory of go taller.
Well, this heat map reminds me of a Corey Durdin heat map from earlier in the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I felt... I don't want to be too down, because I'm not down. So everyone knows in chat, I'm really content. I'm really confident we'll finish the year strong. But what worries me with this one is last week Owies came on short term, played forward, fucking look dancer. Like, just lived in the forward line, wasn't allowed to leave 50. And then this week we got kind of like creative, and like, don't be creative, just own what you want. Like, I want him in the forward line because he makes things happen. It wasn't the greatest game, but it wasn't a bad game.
Yeah, I get you. Gets a 6.5. Then we'll talk briefly, unfortunately for Zach Williams, just the 2 possessions, both of them, interestingly enough, score involvements. Peach of a kick to Owies in the first quarter. I think you answered my question. You know, what does the injury mean? First of all, I don't know if the injury is that serious. It said hamstring awareness.
Sorry, I'm 38. I haven't got a fucking clue what hamstring awareness means. Like, what? Like, what, he woke up in the morning and realised he's got a hammy? Well done, John. There's 7 billion people.
When did the awareness trend come into this league? I feel like it must have been in the last 2 to 3 seasons.
It is interesting, isn't it? I mean, whatever it is, it is. But I do think we've got to be diligent and ice him for a week. I don't want to force him to play. No. But this game, Zach Williams' game, I really enjoyed it. I really did. The short bits I saw, I was like, okay, this could have been a really fucking good game. That kick, like you said, the pressure acts as well. I think one thing that people forget about Zach is he's worked on that defensive craft in the forward line since going forward. It's really, really apparent that he's putting that energy in. And I think Motlop is the natural position. Yeah. It is the natural position for him. So, I mean, tracking, if you do it per minutes, it could have been an 8.
Okay. So a 5.5, but a tough one to grade nonetheless. Then finally, the sub, Matt Kennedy. Weird that he didn't start in this game, don't you think?
It's like, as I've got older, I've got more cynical and less patience. I'm hitting 38 now, 39 this year, and this one is a head scrap. This one here, if someone said there's $1 billion to explain what Carlton thought with Kennedy, fuck me, I'm not getting it. Bizarre, because he didn't play on the ball, he didn't play in the forward line.
Yeah,
he came on for a forward. We got beaten in the centre the next quarter he came on. He didn't see any of that one. And then Cowan deployed him at halfback, which... Why? I don't get it. This one I don't get, Terry, because it makes no sense to me because you've lost a forward and he's been playing forward and doing quite well. So is he as good as Zach Williams? I don't think he is, but I think it could have been half forward target. Simple option, put Elijah half forward and put him on the ball.
Yeah.
And then Voss seems to do this though. Voss has got that idea because he's played a lot of halfback. It's a bizarre one. And I felt sorry for him because he's been in such good form, man. Like, such good form. And it felt like we played with form with Matt Kennedy this week. Played it. Really played with his form.
So he gets a 4.5 for his game. Obviously, some context needed there. Let's move along to the team because this will paint. Oh, now I'm a bit more confused. Like, I get it. The reds are there. There's way too many reds. One of them is the sub. There's a fair few greens and a couple of blues, though. That's what wasn't there last week.
Yeah, well, last week we had one blue, 9.5, and then we had quite a few 8.5s, if you remember. In the back line, the ball movement was good. I think what this is telling you here is you've got a lot more reds than last week. But what this is telling you is I want you to visualize 6.5 is just a green. Right? So we're talking bog standard. And if we're looking at midfielders getting 6.5s, generally that's a midfielder like a Kennedy. And I mean this with respect. If you named the best midfielders in our football club, you would say Cripps, Hewitt, Walsh, Cerra, like them four. 6.5 is the next guy coming in. So to have two of your leading ones, 6.5 and low, that's a problem. To having that many inside 50s and not having a blue in your key forward, that's a problem. And then your transition when it's your strength, not having anyone near a blue apart from Weitering, is a big one. Is a big problem. So that really shows the benefit of this algorithm. And I think David King nailed it. Carlton didn't play bad. Western Bulldogs didn't play well. They were just less wasteful than us. And you're seeing it here. It's a very wasteful ratings, this.
Yeah, that definitely. I mean, look, watch the game overall. Not that I don't rate the Dogs. I think the Dogs are a solid team. But I think if we were playing, I mean, it's hard dealing in hypotheticals. You can make a hypothetical for anything. But I think a better team, a top 2, top 4 side punishes us a lot more than what the Dogs probably should have. I think we're in the lead by 14.
I said it in my review. GWS and Dogs, it's a fraudulent margin. Because I don't think... If you ask me to ascertain a points result, like how many points based on difference, I would have said we deserve to lose this game by 35 and last week 45.
Yeah.
But we had a little bit of chutzpah at the end and a tail wag. I mean, these last 2 weeks, I would say, without being horrible to Voss, are probably firmly on the idea of trying to fix it because these ones here, fuck me.
Wow, look at that! It's like a Pac-Man, like a dead.
So a little clue to get you in the vibe for a bit later on tonight. We talk about this a lot. The stoppage scores and the stoppage scores again. The margin of victory. Big one here that a bit different to last week where they killed us in the stoppage. This week, they matched us in the turnover game because of the way that we played. And look at how deep that is. How deep that. So it's a tough one, this. This is one where we got it wrong.
All right. The Horizon Finance Group player of the game was Patrick Cripps. No surprises there. Chat, have a guess. Who was the riser? Who was the player that scored the most above what they were expected to? I'll give you 20 seconds. Weitering, got Lidge, Saad, Weitering, bit more Saad, Bam Bam, Cowan.
I think Bugsbell as well, you make a great comment. I do think that the tinkering is deliberate, because I think the last time we saw the Blues tinker was in finals, and tinkering in finals is moronic. You want to be tinkering now. This is the time. We're still second. So Voss getting excited and changing it up. It's fucking second. He's laughing. You were never catching Sydney.
Yeah. It was Adam Saad, the riser. And Patrick Cripps still leads the medal. Interesting point there. I feel like the 5-game winning streak earned us some brownie points, we'll call it, or some cushion. But now we've lost 2 on the trot. Now we're, only 2 games away from, I think, 12th. That's where Collingwood is right now. I think something like that. It's really evened up. The Swans they had lost 2 in a row. They just beat North Melbourne. So there's still a nice little chunk ahead of us. There's another chapter to be written in the story of this year.
Yeah, I think the only worrying thing, well, it's not a worrying thing. The only thing is that your experiments now in the next 2-3 weeks, with all due respect, and don't quote me and say that I'm misrespecting the opposition. I'm not when I say this, but next week against North, we should be able to play half a VFL side and beat them if we're seriously a contender, which we are a contender. We're second on the ladder. So you don't really get much out of the experimentation. So if this week we play Motlop half forward, Connors comes in as an extra player, and we win by 80, we should have won 80. Do you know what I mean? It's not like you're going to get anything and go, oh, that worked. So it's an interesting thing. Voss has experimented against teams that are good teams. Let's be honest, GWS and Dogs are good teams. Dogs should be in the 8. We're not going to really know until probably the Collingwood game, and then maybe finals.
Maybe. And that's the challenge of winning and being successful. When you win and you're not challenged, your ego can grow, but your skills will stay stagnant. Even worse is you can pick up bad habits when you play quote unquote inferior opponents, because they're unable to capitalize on your mistakes. I think what we've been able to show this year is an ability to play good football consistently against the best sides in the comp. And I'm not disrespecting the opponents that we're to face, because on any given day you can get beaten no matter who you're playing. But we've really got to find ourselves again, no matter who we're playing.
You've got to specify it, because I specified it simply. I'm not underestimating them or disrespecting them, but the comments are saying Pom's disrespecting them. Honestly, I need to learn a different language. Honestly, I'm done with English.
English ain't for you, bro.
Do you know what I mean? Take me back to fucking Germany or something. But like I say, you should be beating the Roos. So what I mean by that, I'll re-say it. We're not going to learn if we're changing something against a top 4 side, which we had the opportunities to do this week from 10th to 6th. So for me, it's just a little. You're not going to take anything out of it. If you beat Roos, no one's going to say you're winning the flag. So that's what I'm trying to say. So I mean, clip that, and when we lose to North Melbourne, be like Pom said, if you change stuff against North, you fucked.
It was all your fault, mate.
Please.
Let's take a quick look at some of the opposition players that really got a hold of us. Now, I've got a gripe with Jamara. Drafted him in my fantasy team. Actually drafted him over Harry McKay. Disaster. We finally dropped him to the waiver wire. And now he starts playing like the Jamara I thought we'd see. What is it with us playing these guys into form? Having their career best games?
Well, I mean, Jamara had a good game, and why did he have a good game? The way that their midfield moved the ball, you've only got to look at us around stoppage. The overlap run, the overload they created, the short, sharp handballing in space, they did incredibly well. So then it makes it easy because when the ball comes in quickly and you're a forward like Jamara, you're a forward like Charlie Curnow, you have chances, don't you? You have the ability. So it's really interesting. You look, 13 score involvements, the 4 goals, the marks inside 50, all leading his team. Interesting here. So now his direct matchup, right? His direct matchup was Weitering. So now people will say, how did he score 9, Weitering, in the algorithm? How did he get in the coaches' votes? Well, the reason is partly because of that stat. The goals that were kicked on Jacob Weitering weren't as a direct consequence for Weitering's defence. It was because of how the ball moved. 2 of them goals, he was shepherded away by Caleb Marchbank. So the goal's not counted as his fault. And he got a 10, Jamari. Like, you saw the difference here between Charlie and this guy.
Yeah.
It's how that ball came in. Like, he had a feast. Like, I bet Charlie was watching Bont kick it inside 50 and goes, fuck, I wish I could play there.
I know, right? I think of that often with some of the entries that we
did you see it? I want everyone after the show tonight. So 9 o'clock, you've got videos all day, right? You've got videos all day till 9 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, go back and watch the third quarter and just watch how they got so much freedom in that midfield. They just overlapped, and then that makes the kicks easy because they can change the angles, which then help the forward entries. And Carlton had one option, a big bomb from 55 metres out.
Is that a byproduct of them just having 1 extra at stoppage and us having 1 extra behind the ball?
Not too sure why we play 1 extra behind the ball, Terry.
Yeah,
I can't explain it. I don't, especially when the stats tell you Carlton are getting worse around stoppage the more numbers we have behind the ball. And if you go back to last year, we were too offensive around the ball, and that's why our turnover scores were so shit, because there was too many people forward of the ball.
Yeah.
So Voss has got to find that happy median.
Yeah. Let's take a look at the Bont. That's a very Patrick Cripps-esque heat map. No?
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Bont and Cripps because they're constantly compared. But, like, for me, I don't see much difference in the pair of them. I think one is sexy going forward, which Cripps isn't. But I think Cincotta wouldn't have been able to do to Cripps what Cincotta did to Bont. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think you're judging 2 similar players who are very different. But this was a very strong performance from Bont. Once he got free, he allowed that. And that's the interesting thing with their rotations. They heavily rotate on the ball. And Bontempelli just literally could dish out people all the time. He was very, very strong. So, real good game from Bont and a lead from the front.
He did. He's a champion of the game. It was a 9. And then the final player we're going to look at from the opposition that hurt us was this guy, Bailey Dale. But you just knew going in. 638 metres gained. So in this heat map, obviously the dogs are kicking to the right of screen, right?
Yeah, so you're going to have to use a little bit of ingenuity in your frontal cortex and reverse it. But alas, they're going left to right from screen, so we're going right to left. So, I mean, this is what I say about all halfbacks. So this is why I'm not a big fan of tagging halfback flankers, to be honest. Because halfback flankers need someone to keep that 638 meters gained is irrelevant if the disposal efficiency is 42, right? So you look at how Carlton have done really well against halfback flankers, and I can prove we're pretty good against halfback flankers. It's a bit of a myth that we're not bad because we're the hardest side to score against in the league from turnover, right? We're one of the hardest sides to score against from scores generated in the back half. It's a massive improvement. And that number's getting worse over the last 4 weeks because we've started to tag halfbacks again, where before we tried to take away their options, which worked really well because we played really high up the ground. And Bailey Dale here would have looked at the way Cowan sat up. And the amount of times he received the ball, these blue dots inside 50, there was no one around him. So he got the cheap mark, he gave it off, and then boom, he's suddenly into Carlton's wing. And that's why we reacted. If you saw where we started to play players back, you saw them lines from Cerra, TDK, Pittonet. We tried to stop that kick he does there. And it was way too easy because he was 60 away from goal. He was half there. And it was a bad structure there because Bailey Dale would have looked at that and gone, thank you very much. Cheers.
Yeah.
See you later.
So he got a 9 for his game. And there's your ratings. I'm glad that's done.
It is, yeah.
It's so fixable, though. It's so that was what I took away from it. Even watching it. The ratings just reaffirmed it. It's extremely fixable.
Trust me, we have done these shows many a time and wanted to cry. There's nothing worth crying about. This is just a little bit of an application, a little bit of nous, and we'll be back winning in no time at all.
Yep. Gee, you brought out the piece of paper with the marker. That's real time.
Someone will complain about it.
Maybe we'll leave it there, mate. It's been a tough day.
Mate, no. It was a mush.
It's been a tough day for the Pommies. But they did well. And you've done well. I like how you're wearing the white in honor of the Poms, you know?
Mate, it wasn't. If it was, it was subliminal. But there you are. Yeah, I mean, the bit of England love.
Well, I love the outfit. Thanks for putting this together. Thanks for your contributions, mate. Thanks to those of you who tuned in. Thanks to Horizon Finance Group for being the sponsor of this show. And you know what? I think we're going to be all right. Got to turn this ship around. I thought last week was the kick up the arse, but maybe another week is what we need. We'll talk later in the week around selection and things like that. Maybe even in the Blue Abroad show at 7. But yeah, mate, thank you,
mate. You're more than welcome.
Go Blues, everyone. Have a good night.
Go Blues.